Your best employees are quitting. That's not because they're weak, it's because they're strong, and you've been using that strength against them. Every time you say some version of our people are resilient, you think it's a compliment, but that is not a compliment. You're announcing that your operating model requires people to overextend themselves just to meet your basic expectation. Resilience is not the virtue, it's a smoke alarm. And if you're celebrating it every week, you're basically saying, we run this place without enough slack. If you're a leader who keeps losing your top performers and you can't figure out why, this video is going to change everything. If you don't know me, my name is Manya Chylinski. I survived the Boston Marathon bombing. I gave a TED Talk about invisible trauma and what it teaches us about leadership, and I worked to help advance federal legislation, the Post-Disaster Mental Health Response Act, focused on expanding access to crisis counseling after disasters. And all of it started because my own city treated my trauma like it didn't count, since I walked away without a visible injury. Today, I'm going to show you why your most resilient employees are burning out faster than everyone else, and why the way you are trying to fix it might actually be making things worse. Let me paint you a picture. You have an employee who always delivers. They take that extra client call, they fix the broken process, they cover for an understaffed shift, they smooth over when there's a conflict, and they hit all their deadlines. You celebrate that. You celebrate them. You call them rock star. You call them a warrior. And you give them more responsibility because you know they can handle it. And then one day they quit. And you're shocked because they seemed fine. They never complained. They always said yes. This is happening in organizations everywhere. The World Health Organization classifies burnout as an occupational phenomenon. It's the result of chronic workplace stress that hasn't been successfully managed. It is not a personal weakness. Burnout is a workplace failure. And your most resilient employees are the ones who are absorbing that failure. Here's what's actually happening in your organization. You're running on operational debt. Too much work, too little capacity, too many priorities, too few buffers. And in that environment, your resilient employees are the shock absorbers. They fill in the gaps, they absorb the chaos, and they become that default escalation path. And you celebrate them for handling it. That trains the organization to route even more load to the very same people because they're the safest bets. They're the ones who get it done. This is the resilience trap, and it's quietly killing your top talent. This pattern shows up everywhere. First, the system creates chronic strain, bad staffing, constant level of urgency, vague priorities, broken tools, unrealistic timeline. Second, your most resilient people compensate for that. They're conscientious, they're capable, and they're socially rewarded for that self-sacrifice. Third, leadership sees results, and you conclude, we have resilient people. And then that becomes the reason not to change the system. This is why saying our people are resilient often functions like a soft excuse. It's a compliment and it justifies the status quo. Resilience research shows this clearly. Resilience is strongly tied to resources, supervisor support, autonomy, team cohesion. It's not personal toughness. So when you celebrate resilience without fixing the system, something dangerous happens. You substitute appreciation for real, meaningful structural change. That praise becomes a transaction. We value you, so please keep absorbing the damage. And employees feel that difference immediately. They know when they're being valued, and they know when they're being used. Let me show you how organizations accidentally punish their best people. First, the reward for resilience is more work. If you reliably save the day, you become the default escalation path. That's not recognition. That's concentrating the load onto someone. The same names show up in every crisis, every escalation, every time you need a fix. And praise replaces investment. When saying thank you substitutes for fixing the actual problem, people notice that. That applause starts to feel like a performance theater. And research backs this up. One study of a peer recognition system found, contrary to leadership expectations, employees actually reported feeling less appreciated after the system rolled out. That recognition doesn't fix the fundamentals, it exposed the gap. Third, engagement doesn't protect anyone. High drive and commitment don't immunize people from burnout. They actually make people more vulnerable because they'll push longer before they break. And when they do break, it's not just burnout, they leave. Recent research shows that burnout is hitting hardest in high responsibility groups, like senior leaders or women in leadership. Lean In and McKinsey report that 6 in 10 senior level women experience frequent burnout, higher than men at the same level. Newer senior women, and especially Black women, report even higher rates. At the same time, many organizations are pulling back on the very support systems that reduce burnout, like formal sponsorship and women-focused programs. That's the resiliency trap with the equity edge. You're not just losing talent, you are losing very specific talent. The people who already had to be more resilient just to get in the room. Most leaders don't recognize they're doing this. So here's a diagnostic. If you see these patterns, you're not resilience positive, you are resilience dependent. You use hero language, and that's normal for you. Rock star, warrior, you talk about being scrappy, you say, we always find a way. Fighting fires is routine, not an exception. You don't plan for capacity, you figure it out. Recovery isn't real. After one crunch, people roll straight into the next. And you get attrition around your most competent people, the ones who had options. I want you to ask yourself this. If your top 10% of performers stop doing extra, would your business still function normally? If the answer is no, you don't have resilient people. You have a fragile system propped up by human buffering. And that's the cost most leaders never see. I call it the resilience tax. Your people pay with sleep, with health, with their relationships, with creativity, because being in survival mode kills experimentation. And they pay with long-term commitment. And they stop believing that there's going to be change. And they stop believing change will come. There's another cost too. Quiet moral injury. When someone cares deeply about quality, about clients, patients, or their team, and they're forced to cut corners over and over due to workload, it creates cynicism and emotional distance, which the World Health Organization identifies as a core dimension of burnout. Your best people tired. They're losing faith. Here is the shift in perspective. The companies that win long-term aren't going to look heroic. They'll look slower in the moment because they're not constantly improvising. They're investing in the boring things. Redundancy, clear decision rights, fewer priorities, staffing that matches the demand, real time for recovery, managers with manageable things to control, processes that prevent the same fires from recurring again and again. This isn't hustle culture, and it's going to feel almost unremarkable. And that's the point. Resilience should be the shock absorber for rare events, not the daily source of fuel. You need resilience every day. You're revealing something that your operating model is broken, and your people are the ones paying for it. Okay, so what does this mean for you as a leader? First, stop promoting the people who endure chaos. Promote the people who've chaos. Make resilience expensive. Every all-hands save triggers a root cause review. Track hours of heroics like they are defects. Pay exceptional effort back with just praise. And load balance away from your top performers. Rotate escalation duties. Cap work in progress. Stop rewarding the fastest fix with the next fix. And make sure you install real slack into your system. Slack isn't laziness. Without slack, resilience is a daily operating requirement. And your managers are sitting at the center of this. They provide clarity, prioritization, protection, and they can't do that when they're overloaded. Right now, managers oversee nearly 3 times as many employees as they did just a few years ago. And that makes it dramatically harder for them to deliver real support. Your resilient employees are not your competitive advantage. They're the canary in the coal mine. And if you keep celebrating their ability to survive a broken system, you're going to lose them. Not because they're weak, but because they're strong enough to know they deserve better. The real question isn't, how do you build more resilient employees? It's how do you build a system that doesn't require superhuman resilience just to survive. If this video changed how you see your organization, there's more that you need to understand. Watch the next video where I break down how trauma actually shows up at work and what leaders can do about it. And if you're serious about building teams that can heal and perform, subscribe to this channel, because the future of work isn't choosing between well-being and results. It's building systems that support both.